You're probably wondering right now, why are you on the floor, Jeff? And why are you standing right next to your heater and with all your wires and things? Well, the problem is right now I'm doing a bunch of tests over on my desk where I normally take these pictures, so I'm way down here. But I wanted to share with you a technique that I picked up a few years back that's been really handy for taking pictures of products like this tofu board that I'm reviewing. And it's really simple. You can use it with any kind of camera that can allow you to manually focus. I have my Nikon D750 here, which doesn't have this feature built into it called focus stacking. And I do it with my Nikon D700 all the time too. All you need is a lens that allows you to manually focus and a little patience and maybe Photoshop. But once you have those three things, you can make product shots that go from being a little blurry in the foreground and background to being super sharp. So I'm going to show that here. If I just focus on this tofu board right in the middle and take a picture, you can see that the back end of it and the front end of it are all a little out of focus. And you can try to fix that by increasing your aperture up to f16, f22, but that causes a little bit of image degradation, and it also makes it a little harder to light your subject. I'm just using ambient light here, but if you wanted to use other lights, you'd have to increase the light output to a very high level, and you might not even be able to do that. And it might make for more glaring lights and reflections that you don't want to have to deal with. So focus stacking is simply the process of taking a bunch of pictures with different focus points on the actual product and then putting them together afterwards. So what I'm going to do on my camera is set it into manual focus mode. And I'm going to manually focus using this focus ring. And on this lens, this is actually an old Nikon 60mm lens, an AFD lens, so I have to set focus on the lens too. So I'm going to focus on the front edge of the board first. And after I do that, I'm going to take one picture. Then I'm going to focus a little bit further back, maybe a 1/4 inch back on the board, a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further. And it looks like I'm getting to the back edge of the board, so I'm going to take one more, and that'll be that. Now I have the series of pictures that I took. I'm going to import them on the computer. I'm going to stand up vertically so that the blood stops rushing to my head, and then I'll show you what to do in Photoshop. Alright, so I imported all the pictures. You can see that first picture here. This is what most people would end up with, but you can notice that there's a lot of blur in the background and a lot of blur in the foreground. And the only thing that's really sharp is the middle of this picture, which is nice, but unless you're really trying to lead people just to this logo or just to the micro SD card, it's not a great picture overall for a product. So the first picture I took in the series was this one, and you can see that the focus point is right here on the front edge, but everything else is blurry. And in the next picture, the focus point is right behind that. Next picture, it's behind that. And it keeps going and going and going through the series. So the first thing that I need to do so that Photoshop can give me a good picture is edit this picture a little bit, bring up its exposure to a point where the background, which is supposed to be pure white, is pretty much pure white. Maybe give it a little bit more contrast and color to make it pop. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to copy that adjustment and paste it onto each of these other pictures in the series. You could do this a little quicker if you were not using photos. One thing that I hate about the fact that I'm using photos instead of aperture is I can't batch apply settings changes like this. And I could use Lightroom, sure, but I'm using photos for this, so sue me. All right, so those are the pictures there. I'm going to select the last one up to the first one in this series and export them at full size as JPEGs, just so that Photoshop can process them a little more quickly. I'm going to do it in my downloads folder and say focus stack. Export these photos. All right, and now inside of Photoshop, I'm going to load the files in using a script. So if you go to File, Scripts, Load Files into Stack, I can browse for the pictures that I just exported into my Downloads folder. And I'm going to use the Shift key to select them all and click Open. And I'm going to attempt to automatically align source images. And this is important because when I was taking those pictures, I didn't have the tripod locked down rock solid. And also the the focusing on that lens has a little bit of focus blur where as you focus in and out, the image actually moves a tiny bit. So Photoshop's going to make sure that everything's in alignment as it stacks these images together. Okay, so Photoshop has now aligned all the layers, but they're not blended together at all. So you can still see the first picture here is just focused here. So the next thing I need to do is select all of these pictures by holding Shift and clicking on the first and last one. And then I'm going to go to Edit and then Auto Blend Layers. And there's an option for Stack Images. And we want to make sure that that is selected. I usually leave seamless tones and colors in case Photoshop wants to tweak things a little bit to make them look a little better together. But after you do this, Photoshop's going to spend some time calculating what's in focus by using contrast detection and things like that. And then it'll combine all of the images into one. And at the end, we should end up with a nice, sharp product image that we could use on a website or in advertisements or in a video. And there you have it. Look at this. Very nice. Everything is sharp all the way from the back corner, this little screw hole back here, all the way to the front corner. And sometimes if you do this and you zoom way in on something, you might see a little blend zone where something is a little bit off or a little bit blurry. But really, this is a really adequate picture now for any kind of magazine or catalog or online site where you can zoom into it up close and see all the details in sharp, contrasty colors. And people will be much more willing to buy your product now. So anyways, thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Jeff Geerling.